If you've ever lived in the shadow of someone worshipped like a legend within your own family, then maybe you'll understand what I'm about to say. My name is Lily Harper. I'm 30 years old and currently working as a biotech engineer at a research institute in Denver, Colorado. But that title is never mentioned at family dinners, nor does it appear in the framed photos lining the shelves at my mother's house. In that house, there's only one person worth remembering: my brother, Brandon. She's glued to her computer again, huh? Brandon just got his quarterly bonus. Did you hear that? That's the kind of thing my mom says at every gathering. I could win a national research award and she'd still only ask whether I called Brandon to congratulate him for buying a new pickup truck with his commission. I don't hate my brother, but I've never been treated fairly. Since childhood, I got used to the adoration in my mother's eyes whenever Brandon entered the room. He could get a C on a math test and the whole family would go out to celebrate. Me. I earned a full scholarship to Stanford and my mom just sighed and said, "That's so far away. Who's going to take care of us when we're old?" I remember standing in the kitchen doorway holding my acceptance letter. My mom was doing dishes. My dad, still healthy back then, was reading the paper. I spoke nervously. "Mom, I got into Stanford." She kept scrubbing dishes as if she hadn't heard me. She just said, "That school's too far. And what's the point of studying so much? It's hard enough to get married that way." I swallowed hard. My dad looked up at me briefly, his gaze kind but quickly lowered his eyes again. Not one word of praise. Every summer I worked unpaid internships in research labs. Brandon, on the other hand, sold insurance policies and landed a few deals, and our parents threw him a barbecue to celebrate. "They say Brandon is so charming, he can convince anyone," my mom bragged to the neighbors while I quietly wiped down the picnic table. Nobody seemed curious about the work I was doing in the lab or what drove me to it. My dad, the only one who ever saw me as a whole person, died of a stroke when I was 25. His funeral was the last time I saw Brandon truly silent. He didn't boast. Didn't laugh loudly. He just stood beside my mom, patting her back like the family's golden hero. I knelt at my father's grave and read the words he once scribbled on a small note I still keep in my wallet. "Lily, I know you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone dim your light." But ever since he passed, that light felt buried under the ashes of favoritism. I used to wonder, was I just being jealous? Was I selfish for wishing just once to be seen without having to work 5 times harder than anyone else? The answer came slowly, like a crack running through memory. It wasn't praise I craved, just the simple act of being seen. Brandon called today, my mom said the last time I visited. He asked if I needed a new water filter. So thoughtful. I had just been invited to join a national-level research project and was preparing to fly to Germany to present. I almost told her, but the way her eyes lit up talking about Brandon, I hesitated. "Would you like me to stay a few more days?" I asked. He waved me off. "You've got meetings to run off to. Besides, Brandon said he'd be here this weekend. We can talk then when everyone's here." To her, everyone always meant Brandon. I've spent countless holidays receiving hastily wrapped gifts while Brandon got beautifully boxed presents with ribbon bows. I remember one Christmas when I was 27, I gave my mom a silk scarf from France. She left it on the couch. Then Brandon walked in, hugged her from behind, and handed her a thermal water bottle. She squealed like she'd been given jewelry. "Oh wow. Just what I needed, it keeps things hot. Brandon always knows exactly what I like." I sat quietly by the glowing Christmas tree. The lights on the tree flickered, but nothing warmed the chill sitting in my chest. I didn't blame Brandon. I blamed how my family defined love. A place where accomplishments meant less than timely appearances, where care only counted when it came from the person they loved most. What I didn't know was that just a few years later, I'd be the one holding the fate of the very house they once treated as their private kingdom. And it all started with something seemingly ordinary. A business trip that ended early, and a house with lights on at an unusual hour when I got back. I used to think that by sharing financial ties with my family, I could also repair something much more fragile: recognition. 2 years after my father passed, my mom started complaining about the maintenance costs on the old house in the suburbs of Aurora, Colorado. The roof leaked, the heating system was unreliable, property taxes kept climbing. Brandon told her he and his wife Amanda were looking for a more stable place to raise their newborn daughter, Daisy, only 6 months old at the time. I still remember that dinner at the local Mexican restaurant. My mom wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin, then sighed. If only we could pool our money together and keep the house your dad built with his own hands. Brandon glanced at me. I was thinking, if Lily pitches in, we could help Mom. We'd co-own it. Share everything. Amanda didn't say a word, but her gaze quietly fell on me. I had saved my entire bonus from the recent national research grant, about $58,000. That sentence, keep the house your dad built with his own hands, stirred a part of me I hadn't yet let go of. I nodded. Hey. But everything has to be clear and fair. If I'm contributing, I get equal ownership. We met with a real estate attorney, Denise, who also handled transactions for my research center, to draft a co-ownership agreement. According to the document, Brandon and I each owned 50%. My mother was granted lifetime residency in the converted garage apartment, a self-contained unit with a kitchenette, private bathroom and separate entrance. The upstairs, I stated, will be mine. I need quiet space to work and full privacy. Make sure it's in the contract that no one is allowed up there without written permission. Denise nodded and typed steadily. Brandon just laughed. You're so meticulous. But hey, having ground rules is good. Amanda stayed mostly quiet during the meetings, but I noticed her expression tighten every time we discussed separate ownership. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just tired from taking care of the baby. We contributed our shares. Brandon's came mostly from a loan backed by his in-laws. I wired my full payment on time, down to the last dollar. The house was renovated over 6 months. Fresh paint, soundproofing upstairs, where I set up a small home lab for remote work. The first floor belonged to Brandon. Spacious living room, open kitchen, and an Italian-style oven he always bragged was his passion piece. Mom moved into the back apartment, fully equipped. Electric stove, recliner with massage mode, wall-mounted TV with a Netflix subscription I set up. I wanted her to feel cared for. No words necessary. On move-in day, Brandon slung his arm over my shoulder. You know what? I think this is a good start for our whole family. I gave a faint smile. As long as everyone respects the boundaries. At first, things seemed peaceful. I traveled frequently, for conferences or collaboration invitations, to Tokyo, Boston, Munich. When I came home, it was usually to softly lit hallways, the faint smell of food drifting up from downstairs, and the gentle babble of kids echoing through the house. I didn't mind. Every Sunday, I'd knock on the back apartment door, hand my mom some fruit, a pastry I'd picked up from a trip, or just spend a few quiet minutes chatting. She would often smile and say, Brandon's sister is so thoughtful. Too bad she doesn't know how to keep a man. I swallowed hard. The topic of starting a family was the sharpened knife wrapped in polite words at our house. Still, I tried to keep things civil even though I never truly felt safe. Whenever I had to leave for a longer trip, I would text Brandon, please keep the second floor untouched for me. No one's allowed up there. He usually replied with a thumbs up or a short, got it. I wanted to believe him. One April afternoon, I received an invitation from the European Biotech Alliance, 3-day conference in Brussels. I packed quickly and left behind a gift for Mom, a small box of Greek herbal tea in a linen pouch. On the second floor kitchen table, I set a handwritten note. Back earlier than expected. Please keep the house in order as agreed. Lily. The round-trip ticket was booked. What I didn't expect, that moment I landed back in the US a day early thinking about the pie I'd bring Daisy, was for my trust to be shattered beyond repair. I wasn't prepared for the blinding porch lights, the street lined with parked cars, or the white banner that slammed into my vision the second I opened the door. Family is forever. Taylor Reed Reunion 2025. I froze on the steps. Taylor was my last name. Reed was Brandon's. And not one person had invited me. No message. No heads up. Something was happening. And deep inside I sensed, it wasn't just a reunion. It was orchestration. A move in someone's game. Something colder and deeper was unfolding. I wheeled my suitcase past the threshold. No one noticed I was home. But in just a few minutes, that shadow they once pinned on me was about to be torn apart under these party lights. I crossed into the house I had paid half to preserve, and the first thing I saw were stunned faces like I was a stranger. My cousin Abigail stood frozen with a glass of wine, her mouth half open before shutting quickly, swallowing whatever she was about to say. Some uncle I vaguely remembered from Brandon's wedding stopped chewing his meat-filled pastry. Laughter in the living room dropped like a stone onto the polished hardwood floor, slick and colder than ever. I heard someone whisper behind me, "Wasn't she supposed to come tomorrow?" In a room full of shared blood, I was the outsider. A white banner stretched across the living room. "Family is forever, Taylor Reed Reunion 2025. Below it, long banquet tables lined with red and white checkered cloth, pies, barbecue, craft beer. It looked just like the town's annual festival. Except, it was happening inside my house. Amanda was the first to recover. She approached, her lips drawing into a fake curve. "Lily, you're back early, what a surprise. But hey, great timing." I ignored her and turned to Brandon, who just stepped out from the kitchen carrying a tray of cold beers. He almost dropped it when he saw me. Sis? You didn't say you were coming back today." I didn't know our house was hosting a festival either. My mother stood in the center of the crowd, beaming as she told stories about Brandon's days as high school football captain. When she spotted me, she paused, then floated over like I was a lost guest. "You're back. I thought your flight was tomorrow morning. But this is good. Everyone will be happy to see you." I glanced around. On the walls were large, carefully framed photos. Brandon's graduation, his wedding, little Daisy in a white lace dress. A huge poster read, "Taylor Reed Family Tree, a legacy to uphold." My name was nowhere. I headed straight upstairs. I didn't need to ask. I already knew something had snapped inside me. My bedroom door was ajar. Unlocked. Inside my tiny office, where I kept project drafts, my documents had been shoved into a corner, replaced by sleeping bags, throw pillows, scattered baby toys. My room had been turned into guest quarters for a distant cousin and her husband from Kansas, according to Mom, who followed me upstairs minutes later. "They drove a long way. Their legs aren't strong anymore and the stairs are too high," she said. I clenched both hands, my voice drained of emotion. "What about my room? Didn't anyone think to ask?" Mom clicked her tongue. "You always make a fuss. It's just for a few days. You're hardly ever here anyway." Her words hit like a flood of old memories. Every Thanksgiving I'd take time off early, come home to cook, bake, set the table. Yet Brandon's toasts never included my name. Standing at the head of the table, he'd raise his glass. "Thanks to Mom, my wife, and both sets of grandparents for this amazing dinner." Me. I washed dishes longer than my entire single adult life. Last year, I had a research paper published in the Journal of Bioengineering. A coworker sent flowers to the house. Mom read the card and placed the vase near the window, blocking the walkway. "Smells like chemicals. Might be better outside." When Brandon made top 10 in quarterly insurance sales, Mom booked an entire restaurant, posted pictures on Facebook with the hashtag proud of my son. No one had ever asked what I was researching. Even when I was nominated to a federal advisory board, she only mumbled, "Sounds like brain strain. Aren't you worried no guy will want that?" I used to think, if I tried a little harder, they'd change. If I came home more, sat beside Mom longer, smiled more in family photos. I was wrong. That night, I lay in my own room, but someone else was in the bed. I was on a yoga mat on the floor. My certificates had been taken down, replaced by crayon scribbles from a child. My phone buzzed softly. A message from Professor Walter, my advisor from the nanotech program at MIT back in 2018. "The EU grant project is open. They need someone like you. Your Brussels presentation impressed them. Ready to move forward." I typed, "I've been ready for a long time. Just didn't know where to begin." Downstairs, the music started up again. Some old country song Brandon had loved since college. Laughter burst out, someone clapped like thunder. I knew then they didn't need me to complete their family portrait. But what they didn't know was that I no longer needed to be part of it either. I returned to the second floor as the party downstairs shifted into karaoke. Someone was belting out a painfully off-key cover of "Take Me Home, Country Roads." I opened my bedroom door and realized this wasn't my space anymore. Unfamiliar bags were piled by the door. The olive bedsheets I always washed with unscented detergent had been replaced with beige floral blankets, the kind my mom liked. My vanity was now holding someone else's jewelry. On the nightstand, the photo of me and Dad from graduation day had been pushed to a lower shelf, making room for a plastic flower vase with a purple ribbon. I walked into the bathroom. My perfume, the light citrus amber one, was shattered on the tile floor. Shards of glass caught the yellow light like some warped joke. I stood there, unable to speak, only hearing the muffled laughter downstairs as someone bragged about Brandon's barbecue marinade. I stepped back, avoiding the broken glass, pulled out my phone and opened the camera. I photographed everything: the bed, the vanity, the bathroom floor, the missing certificates on the wall. Each frame was a piece of evidence, not for court but for my own sanity. Proof that I wasn't imagining this. Mom appeared right after, tapping gently like this was a hotel room. "You should have let me know you were coming back, sweetie. You startled me." I looked at her, the words rising in my throat but catching somewhere deeper. "Mom, who slept in my room?" "Oh, Pamela and Harvey. They drove all the way from Idaho. Their backs were killing them. Brandon said the second floor wasn't being used, so I let them stay. You're always traveling, so what's the harm?" "No one thought to ask me." She frowned. "You keep to yourself so much, people assumed you didn't care." "I thought Brandon had told you." I let out a hollow laugh. "He sent me exactly 3 words. It's all fine." No one in that house thought I had a say about the place I helped pay for. I was just a shadow, convenient to hide, easier to push aside. The door flung open. Brandon walked in without knocking. "Come on, sis. Do you really need to blow this out of proportion? It's a family gathering, not a board meeting. You invited 99 people into my house, without saying a word, and I'm not supposed to be upset? It's our house, Lily. You always forget that part. We didn't break anything. Just using the space a little. Using my bed, my bathroom, breaking my keepsakes?" Amanda showed up behind Brandon, arms folded. "You never cared about these family events. I didn't think you'd mind." I turned to Mom. "You let people hang their pictures, set up decorations, print a family tree without my name because I didn't care?" Mom hesitated for a second. "You're rarely around. Brandon's more connected. Everyone knows his face." I clenched my hands. "So just say it. I don't belong here." Brandon shrugged. "Don't be dramatic. You're a scientist. You're busy. We get it. But since you're here early, there's something we've been meaning to talk about." I crossed my arms. "What is it?" Amanda smiled, not even pretending to hide her excitement. "We're thinking of having another baby. This house is starting to feel small. If you're planning to move sometime soon, we'd be happy to buy out your share." I didn't respond. I walked straight to the closet and opened it. In the corner was a manila folder wedged behind some suitcases. I pulled it out. Credit documents. Submortgage paperwork. Copies of credit card statements under Brandon's name. A few overdue notices. I turned, my voice sharp as ice. "This is the real reason for this family reunion, isn't it?" Mom stepped forward, her face drained of color. "Lily, please let me explain." I raised a hand. "No need. I just need quiet." I locked the door. In my mind, everything played in fast forward. Research drafts, the EU invitation, shattered glass, and that photo with Dad. A message from my best friend Natalie popped up. "You home yet? Don't tell me your place turned into a soap opera again." I replied with just one line. "I need a place to crash tonight." "Okay." She answered instantly. "Always. Couch is yours. Red wine's waiting." I exhaled deeply. This homecoming wasn't just a shock. It was a wake-up call. No house can be broken from the outside, unless the people inside leave the door wide open. I left that house in the night without saying goodbye. Mom knocked once, her voice raspy. "Lily, don't make a scene. The relatives are here. Don't embarrass me." I didn't answer. The wooden door closed behind me like a clean cut, sharp, final, cold. Natalie had already prepped the sofa at her little place in Capitol Hill. She hugged me when I walked in and didn't ask anything. We just drank wine in silence. I didn't need to explain. My face told the whole story. The next morning I woke up early. Beneath Denver's light mist, I grounded myself by opening my laptop and uploading every photo I had taken the night before. The changed bedsheets, the shattered perfume bottle, Brandon's financial documents. I grouped them into a folder labeled property violation. By late morning, Brandon texted, "Still mad? I think we should sit down and talk this through. About buying out your share. I'm really serious." I didn't respond. That afternoon, I went to see my attorney, Josie Franklin, the same one who had helped me draft the co-ownership agreement for the house 2 years ago. As soon as I stepped into her office, I laid the documents on the desk. I need to know exactly where I stand in this game. Josie flipped through the statements. Nearly $37,000 in credit card debt, 3 rounds of refinancing, and 1 denied loan application from Summit Federal Bank. Brandon's drowning in debt. If he buys out your share, it's either borrowed money, or he's hoping you'll lower your price. I gave a dry laugh. He's trying to break me using family unity. Josie tapped her pen on the original agreement. Good thing you listened to me and included the clause requiring written consent for any event over 20 people, and the provision protecting privacy for exclusive use areas. There are clear violations. I stayed silent for a moment, then asked, what if I want to keep my share but not live there? Switch to rental. You collect profit, professional management handles everything. Clean, no emotional mess. I can refer you to a trusted agency. You'll need to notify Brandon, but no consent is needed. I nodded. Step by step, I felt solid ground forming beneath my feet again. That night, while I was checking emails, I got a message from my mom. Just one sentence. You're tearing this family apart. Don't be selfish. Right after, Brandon sent a string of texts. I need an answer. The house is too crowded, we can't keep going like this. Stephanie's super stressed not knowing what you're planning. You can't just hold on to that part and be absent. No one can live like this anymore. I didn't reply. Instead, the next morning, I met with the representative from the property management company, Emily Carson. A woman in her early 40s, voice sharp as a blade but impeccably polite. The upstairs unit is the legal property of Lily Harper. She's assigning full management and rental rights to us. I signed the papers. It felt like placing a final note at the end of a discordant song. 2 days later, I returned to the house while Brandon was at work. Mom stayed in the back garage and didn't come out. I went straight upstairs, carrying a suitcase, my camera, and the new inspection report from the real estate agency. The second floor unit was still a mess. Cheap air freshener mixed with unfamiliar sweat. I put on gloves and photographed every trace. Lipstick smears on the towels, fingernail marks on the headboard. Nothing was overlooked. I was gathering books when the door slammed open. Brandon stood there, face flushed red. What are you doing? I heard you're renting it out. Is that true? I kept my voice steady. Yes. It's legal. I've signed over management. The company will handle everything from now on. You're boxing the whole family in. Mom's really upset. Don't bring her into this. Why do you want to buy my share? To make room for another baby, or to cover the debt you're drowning in? He froze. Didn't answer. I pulled out the financial folder and laid it on the table. You left this in my closet. Did you think I wouldn't find out? You invaded my privacy. Brandon shouted. Oh. And letting strangers sleep in my bed, letting your kids break my things. That's what right. He said nothing. His chest heaved, eyes wild like a cornered animal. I stood tall and said flatly, either you buy my share at market value and take legal responsibility for all damages, or I let a third party rent and manage the property with full control. Your choice. Brandon gripped the doorknob. Stephanie won't be able to live with strangers coming in and out. The baby needs quiet. Then it's best you move. I said, eyes locked on his. The door closed behind him. This time it didn't sound like family. It sounded like a clean break between 2 adults, one trying to take and one finally reclaiming what was hers. I looked down at my phone. An email from the research team in Amsterdam. Lily, we've reviewed your file, and would be delighted to invite you to the Netherlands for a 9-month collaboration. I sat down, still holding my phone. Something inside me lifted. I didn't return to the house after that conversation with Brandon. Instead, I went straight to attorney Josie Franklin's office with the updated documents, printed email, damage photos, and newly signed management contract from Carson Property Services. Everything was clipped, labeled, and in order. Josie pulled out a chair and looked at me with calm but razor-sharp eyes. We'll treat this like we're dealing with a corporation, not relatives. I nodded. No more words needed. From that point forward, all communication with Brandon and my mother was through formal emails, digitally signed and time-stamped. No replies to personal texts. All phone calls declined. I built my boundaries like steel walls. No emotion bleeding into the process. Josie sent the first notice on Tuesday. It detailed the ownership clause violations: use of private property without written consent, damage to personal items, hosting an event beyond permitted size, and willfully withholding information for personal gain. I got Brandon's response 3 days later. Long-winded, deflecting blame ending with, "We're family. We don't need lawyers involved." Josie marked the whole thing in red. Classic. Emotional manipulation to avoid accountability. Ignore. Soon after, I received an email from Mom. "Lily, do you really want to ruin the peace over a few petty things? I told Brandon not to escalate, but you're not cooperating." I didn't answer. Josie drafted a reply on my behalf in full legal language, outlining each material loss and warning that any further intrusion would be recorded as evidence for litigation. 3 days later, Carson Property Services conducted an on-site inspection of the second floor. Their representative, Emily Carson, brought along a videographer, a photographer, and a measuring specialist. Every scratch on the cabinet, every shoe mark on the wooden floor, even the shattered eyeglass case left untouched, all of it was documented in the official report. When Brandon came home in the middle of the inspection, he exploded. "What the hell are you doing? Bringing outsiders into this?" Emily Carson didn't flinch. "We've been legally authorized by Mrs. Lily Harper. This inspection is necessary to protect the rights of the property owner. Any concerns must be addressed through legal representation." Brandon's face turned red, but he didn't dare touch anyone. He turned and walked down the stairs, phone pressed to his ear, mumbling something I didn't care to hear. I assumed he was calling Mom. That night, I locked the second-floor unit and changed the code using a newly installed digital lock system. I emailed the updated access information and backup code to the management company. The next morning, Carson sent me a list of 3 prospective tenants: a female PhD working at the local medical school, a middle-aged Canadian couple working remotely, and a visiting lecturer from MIT relocating to Denver on a fellowship. I chose the first one, her. Mia Lang, a neuroscience researcher. She interviewed via Zoom with a confident voice and asked specific questions about the electrical system and soundproofing. The way she spoke about her workspace needs made me trust her. In the lease agreement, I added a clause strictly prohibiting anyone other than the tenant from setting foot on the second floor. Carson guaranteed this would be carefully enforced. A week later, I moved all my valuables into a rented storage unit, installed an internal camera system, and sent Brandon a final notice. All communications from this point on must go through legal counsel or the property management company. Any actions beyond your legal rights will be dealt with accordingly. The letter was accompanied by an invoice outlining damages, repair costs, furniture replacement, and attorney fees, totaling over $12,000. I authorized deductions from any shared property revenue if Brandon failed to pay within 14 days. That same evening, Mom called. I declined. A message popped up immediately. "You're being cruel. This house raised you. No one expected you to become this cold." I took a screenshot and saved it under the folder. Emotional manipulation, no response. Brandon then sent an email, his tone shifting from anger to pleading. "Mom can't sleep. Stephanie is spiraling into depression. I just want peace." I forwarded it to Josie. She replied simply, "Stay silent. They're backing down because they're afraid of losing all leverage." Every move I made had a signature, a timestamp, and third-party verification. I said nothing more. No explanations. Because what I needed wasn't an apology, it was a boundary that couldn't be breached. A week later, Mia moved in. I received a message from Carson. "Tenant is fully settled. No issues reported. Everything handed over per contract." I opened the window of my temporary downtown apartment, poured a glass of red wine, and watched the city lights in silence. The invitation from Geneva arrived on a rainy afternoon. White envelope, embossed logo from the International Institute of Biomedical Research, tidy as a formal escape from everything that had once made me want to disappear. I sat still for a few minutes, staring at my name printed in bold. Lily Harper, PhD, nominated for the position of lead clinical researcher in hematologic oncology for a 3-year term, full relocation coverage and collaborative opportunities with experts from over 10 countries. The rain continued, tracing slow lines down the glass window of my Capitol Hill rental. I held the letter in both hands. No shaking. No doubts. Only the absolute stillness that follows a storm named family. I sent my confirmation email agreeing to the online interview scheduled for the weekend. At the same time, I called Josie to inform her of my plan to leave the US within 6 weeks. I'll retain ownership of the property here, but I'm not coming back to live. The management company will have full authority. Josie paused for a few seconds, then said, "Good. Physical presence doesn't equal power. Keep the asset, keep the boundary, and keep your spine straight." She chuckled softly. I did too. I spent the following days wrapping up loose ends. Worked with Carson on a long-term lease for Dr. Mia, updated my bank records, transferred access for recurring payments, and finalized a list of belongings to be shipped overseas. Mom didn't reach out again. Brandon did, sporadically with a different tone each time. "Stephanie's still in shock. Are you really leaving? Mom says you're running away. No one understands what you're thinking. And that part of the house, you're just going to leave it like that?" I didn't respond. No anger, no justification. Everything was forwarded to Josie and Carson for handling. The online interview with the Swiss board lasted 2 hours. Intense, unpredictable, but intellectually invigorating in a way I hadn't felt in years, not since drowning in the static of what people call family. They asked for specifics on cellular immune responses, how I led multinational teams in research environments, and the future of Phase 3 clinical trials. I answered with the full force of a passion that had survived years hidden beneath dinner table smiles and insurance sales numbers. 3 days later, I received the confirmation letter. I was accepted. The moment I read the line, "Please confirm your relocation plan within 2 weeks from today," I typed a message to Natalie. "Accepted. Geneva. 3 years." She replied instantly, "Come over tonight. I've got Prosecco and an Adele playlist." That evening we sat on her living room floor, 2 glasses bubbling over, warm yellow lights casting shadows on the walls. Natalie didn't ask about Brandon or Mom. She just quietly played Love in the Dark and looked at me. "You're not running away," she said. "You're going toward something worth living for." I smiled, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to explain why I was leaving. 1 week before my flight, I went back to the house in Aurora one more time. Carson had scheduled a visit to hand over the newly installed maintenance equipment on the 2nd floor. The house was quiet. No more karaoke, no more laughter from the parties. Mom didn't come out of the garage. But she left a letter on the kitchen counter. Ivory envelope, shaky handwriting. "No matter what you do, I'm still your mother. If one day you realize you were wrong, don't be afraid to come back." I folded it and put it in my bag. I didn't tear it. Didn't respond. I went upstairs and opened the window, looking out at the small backyard garden. Down below, Brandon was mowing the lawn slowly. He looked up and saw me. He didn't wave. He just stood still, his expression no longer angry but uncertain, like he was beginning to realize that the family he thought he controlled wasn't in his hands anymore. I closed the door and locked it. My suitcase was already waiting by the floor. The flight to Switzerland took 10 hours. I didn't sleep. Every time I looked out the window, the ocean's glimmer, the thin clouds, the distant ridgelines, they reminded me that there are things larger than resentment, stronger than imposed expectations. I landed at Geneva Airport in crisp, cold air, carrying the official invitation from one of Europe's leading research institutes, a long list of goals, and a heart no longer bleeding. Family still existed. But from now on, distance wasn't just geography. It was a sturdy boundary I had built with clarity, to protect the rest of my life from what once suffocated me in the name of kinship. A year in Geneva passed unlike any period in my life before. I worked in a lab overlooking Lake Geneva, where misty mornings began with the steady clatter of wooden clogs on limestone floors from the Swiss grad students. My team had 8 members from 6 different countries. They didn't know about the family gatherings that crushed me, nor did they care that I had once been labeled the distant daughter. They only knew me as Lily, the woman devoted to stem cell research for 12 hours a day, never missing a meeting, always direct in scientific debate, and never raising her voice when disagreeing. We shared lunch on the rooftop. Lucia's red bean soup, Hannah's plum cake, Zainab's mint tea. No one talked about titles, no one flaunted resumes. We just asked each other, "How are you really doing today?" Gradually, I realized I didn't need to call something family for it to offer me a sense of safety. Around early October, an unexpected email appeared in my personal inbox. From Brandon Harper, subject: "If you read this all the way through, thank you." He didn't start with an apology. No promises. Just described sleepless nights worrying about unpaid loans. How Stephanie was pregnant with their second child, but couldn't stand living in a house that always felt borrowed. He admitted he had been wrong to think he could pressure me into relinquishing my share of the property using blood ties as leverage. "You don't need to forgive me. I just hope we can renegotiate. No traps this time, no missing documents, no claiming it's for mom. Just two adults who messed up." I sat in silence, the words blurring on the screen as the sunset streamed through the glass. I replied a week later. My proposal was clear. Brandon could buy out my share at fair market value, no discounts. 15% of the amount would be set aside as an annual scholarship for female biology students at the University of Colorado, named the James Harper Memorial Fund, to honor my father. My mother would be allowed to stay in the guest unit, under the condition that she sign a legally binding agreement. No interference with the new owner's rights to the property. It took Brandon 3 days to respond. His email was short. "I agree to all terms. Thank you for not slamming the door shut." The transfer process took 6 weeks. A lawyer in Denver coordinated directly with Josie. I didn't return to the States. Everything was handled digitally through the Swiss consulate. When I received confirmation of the funds transfer, I called Natalie, the one who still sent me photos of chocolate cake every weekend even though I was half a world away. "That house is officially not mine anymore." She answered immediately, "But most of what you lost in that house, you've already found again in yourself." I said nothing. Her words felt like a final chord played on a piano that didn't need tuning. In December, I returned to the US for 3 days to speak at a cellular biology conference in Boston. The invitation included a line asking if I'd attend a former research fellows gathering. I said yes. Sunday morning, I stopped by Denver before leaving. Brandon met me at a cafe by the highway. Black coffee, no sugar. We sat across from each other, didn't mention the house purchase, didn't ask about mom's health. Just one sentence from him as I started to stand up. "I often think about that day you came home early and saw the whole family gathered. If I could go back, I wish I had been clear-headed enough to stop before it was too late." I looked at him for the first time in years, and didn't feel suffocated. No one stops when they think they're the center of everything. It's only after they lose it all that they realize they were never the axis to begin with. That afternoon, I dropped by the old garage. Mom opened the door. She looked older than before, but her eyes had lost that sharpness they always had during our arguments. I handed her a pouch of oolong tea and a printed certificate of the scholarship named after my father. "You can hang this up if you want." She nodded, didn't say a word. As I stepped outside, she called after me, "Is it very cold in Geneva?" I turned back, kept my voice as light as the wind. "Just cold enough to keep people from falling asleep in the past." The flight out of the US departed on time the next day. I carried nothing but my usual gray suitcase, my research notebook, and a handwritten letter I hadn't opened, resting on the plane's tray table. Scribbled across the back of the envelope: "To my daughter, don't ever let the world shrink you." The flight attendant's voice echoed through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard your flight to Geneva." I closed my eyes and told myself, some families are made to hold you down. Others you choose to help you soar. I had made my choice. And I carried nothing that no longer belonged to me. Lily's story is a clear reminder that sometimes, in order to protect your self-worth, you have to redraw the boundaries, even with the people closest to you. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves your silent sacrifice. Lily chose to walk away, not to run, but to live in alignment with her abilities, passion, and dignity. In a world filled with family pressure and deep-rooted expectations, standing firm and refusing to compromise with injustice is one of the bravest things you can do. What do you think about Lily's decision? Would you have chosen differently if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel to keep exploring more heartfelt, realistic, and powerful family stories.